And Kevin will be taking us through a very interesting topic, stroke demonstration on deploying apps in Elastic Beanstalk using AWS CodePipeline. I believe that is a very, very interesting topic, stroke demo. So, Kevin, if you're on the call.
Okay, awesome. Okay, I will do my video temporarily, then I'll get off that so that we can maximize on audio, so that maybe people can put a face to the name and a name to the face. I don't know how that usually works, but yeah, then I have see this kind of thing that usually, yeah, let me see if it is going to work. I usually have a lot of issues with starting videos, but it's not okay. I don't know. Maybe my OBS is doing crazy things. I'm not seeing whether it's going to work. But yeah, yeah. So my name is Kevin Tuei. I know I wear so many hats. Let me see which one I'm going to use for this session. So I'm a cloud consultant as with Data Alma, where we actually help clients maybe do migration of workloads to the cloud, as well as security consultancy and even cost optimization. So those are three key areas in terms of what we do. As I'm also an aspiring DevOps engineer, as for example, with a specialty around security. So that means this is the right thing. You know, I said let me challenge myself with this DevOps. I'm getting into Code Cloud and doing a number of different boot camps around DevOps, and I really find it really interesting. I think the I don't know whether anyone of you feels good when you see a pipeline go end to end and it doesn't fail. I don't know how many failures I've ever had. There's so many. There's a time I looked at my Circle CI dashboard with those full of failed. And I think those are the learning opportunities. Anyways, same case to also code build, and it's usually sometimes crazy. And by the time you troubleshoot, and it's your application, and maybe it's something that you didn't do, but full of learning. And I think that is I can say that's the sweetness of DevOps. So uh, I actually thought, should I do slides or should I just get onto it? Then I decided, no, no slides today. So today we're just going to get direct into the whole kind of thing. And then afterwards, what you're going to see, I don't know whether I can see whether I can share my screen, but whether it will appear on the other side. And if you see so many tabs, please forgive me. I don't like closing tabs. For now, let me just share my whole screen for now, then I'll stop that, then I'll do it another one. So you confirm with me. Okay, so can you see this screen? Minimize this. Can you see the screen? Can confirm anyone? You can. Awesome, awesome. I can see. Good.
Yeah.
So this is the challenge we're looking at. So we're supposed to establish a robust CI/CD workflow using some of the AWS services. For our case, for this session, we're looking at Elastic Beanstalk and the code pipeline. So our main objective is, first of all, to connect our personal GitHub repo securely to AWS. And then we can now implement code pipeline to automate the building, the testing, the deployment, and the setup of AWS Elastic Beanstalk, just to ensure smooth application deployment. So we're supposed to integrate GitHub, then we do the code pipeline implementation. When I was doing this challenge, I found it better for me to start with configuring Elastic Beanstalk. Then I come and do the code pipeline implementation afterwards. So when you're doing the Elastic Beanstalk, we're going to install. So here it's better you start with maybe a sample application. So for our case, we'll look at whether we can do a Python application. Then we can also now look at the integration of the code pipeline. So once we have the sample application app, we're going to now ensure that our own custom application is deployed to Elastic Beanstalk through the code pipeline. Then we can now look at areas of optimization where we can now see what can we really do to make it perform better or faster, look at some of the deployment methods. If you're going to do a blue-green, a rolling, you can even see that even within the Elastic Beanstalk, even the immutable or even the traffic splitting. So looking at some of the delivery methods, which can work and ensure that there is no downtime when you're adding or maybe adding a new feature and it has been committed onto your repo and it's going through the pipeline. Then if you have any issues, you might face some certain issues while you're deploying your pipeline once you've set it up. For example, if you're using S3 bucket, it must have versioning. So when it gets to that maybe deploy stage and maybe or even the source stage of the code pipeline, it will fail if that is not enabled. Also, if you haven't done the integration well in terms of GitHub, it's not going to work. Or maybe again also your security groups. And the good thing with Elastic Beanstalk, you have some of these resources developed for you or deployed for you once you just upload the code. So then again you document. So you need to document so that somebody else can come up with the same kind of configuration. So away from the PDF, let me see if I can stop my share again. Stop presenting. Then I can now share my 1,000 tabs, and please don't start analyzing them. So let me see. Okay, let's see if I can do this window. Then I can just do this window. Okay, please don't analyze them. And yeah, let's go on to this. So where are we? So here we are in this tab. I'm already logged in onto my console. I don't know why it's not loading my, okay, it's already loaded my recently visited. So let us start with Beanstalk, right? We want to deploy a sample application. So obviously you can search here or you can use your recently visited. So I love making things easier for me. So if I see it, I just click on it. But you can do your typing if you have never used that. So so we are into Beanstalk, and Elastic Beanstalk helps developers. Developers really don't want to focus on what? On thinking about what kind of application, what kind of what kind of security group, am I in the right VPC, am I in a private subnet, uh, what are the EC2? But remember, as much as Elastic Beanstalk is free for use, the resources or the services that are initiated or spun up by the Elastic Beanstalk cost you money. So that is something else to note. As much as the service is free, if you deploy, let's say 5 EC2 instance, the EC2 pricing, depending on the kind of instances you choose, also apply. If you're using S3, S3 cost apply. If you're using RDS, the RDS cost apply. So I did this yesterday just to ensure that in case the demo gods go against me today, I'll start somewhere. So what I'll do first of all, I need to just make sure they are coming up again. Then as we do the new one, so allow me to choose this, and then I can. I think I need to do this. I think I need to do this. Then I need to change something here for this domain. Then we're going to start afresh. No worries. I want to start. I did something on the configuration. So I think I need to go to the app, yeah, here under configuration, and then I go to, for anyone lost, don't worry, I haven't started. I'm just making sure that this application is going to come up faster so that you're not going to have those awkward moments of asking each other questions while you're waiting for things to spin up. So I need to go to scaling. Scaling is here. So just make sure that I need to do this. I need to say under time-based scaling. So I think I'll choose our local time. So this one was the pause environment. So I'll add a scheduled action. So start environment. So this one is just what I did yesterday. Is since I didn't want to gather some costs between yesterday night and today during the session, I paused my environment. So by just ensuring that I put the, let me just show this. I just ensured that for the scaling, the minimum is 0, the maximum is 0, and the desired is 0, meaning that all the EC2 instances deployed will be terminated. Then I'm now adding a start environment schedule. So I want it to be one. Okay, this one was a single instance, so we are going to do something different. So this one is a one-time occurrence. What is the time in UTC right now? So it is going to be what? 20 minus 3, 17:35. So I'll do 17:36, 17:30, even 37. I think 2 minutes later would be good. Then I'll add that. Okay, what did I do? The special start environment return taking effect. So it means I need to do what? I need to do maybe 8. I think I need to, yeah, I think I've added just 1 more minute, then it works. So I think I will apply that. Yeah, so that is done. So I hope now, I think now, yeah, that will happen. You can see an environment update has started. So that one will do. So let us start it off. Now we're getting to that. So that is another environment that I did yesterday, which I'll use to explain. So when you're on Elastic Beanstalk, if you've never used it, you're going to find this place. You're going to get this screen. So you just start with creating the application. So there are these two parts. You have your application, and then you have the environment where your application will live. So the environment will be having the resources if you need an RDS or if you need any other kind of thing. So let's call this app, let's say what? Let's call it what? Cloudforce Sky, maybe. Let me just call it that in short. And then I think I'll leave this domain. So what happens here is you can usually have what we call a domain, or we can call it a subdomain within Elastic Beanstalk, which will be like your endpoint where you're going to access your application. For example, if it's a PHP application, a Node application, a Python Flask, it will be accessed through this. Remember that you cannot change this. So if you want, you can go with an auto-generated value, or you can set it up in a name, for example, that would be I can say easy for people to understand or maybe to type in. So then again, we have now the platform. So by default, we want to make things easier for us in terms of our platform. So you can choose a custom if you want to set it up your own, but in a managed platform. So what happens is the platform is maintained and just published by Elastic Beanstalk. So what does that really mean? It means that if there are any updates, if there's any kind of thing around that, uh, right now, these are the languages that are supported, the .NET, the Docker, Go, Java, Node, PHP, Python, Ruby, and Tomcat. Although they're promising that they're working with partners to add more languages. So always remember that we're having the compiled and the interpreted languages. So that's something else very important to note is that if you're using something like Graviton processors, you need to check whether your application supports the ARM64 processors or if you have refactored it or if the binary dependencies are using the x86 or the 32, or yeah, those ones, so that you already know that Graviton helps with more performance and even cost reduction. So those are some of the things you need to note. So for our case, I think my app is going to be a Python, if I'm not wrong, Python application. Is it Python or is it Node? Is it Python or is it Node? Was it Python or is it Node? Okay, I think it was a Node. Let me just confirm. Okay, let me just do. Was it Node or was it Python? I mean, you don't have to do a picky ponky because it has to be the right one. So I think I'll choose Node. It was a Node application. So you can choose, in terms of the branch of the application, you can choose also the kind of platform. So you can choose, for example, right now we have Amazon Linux 2023, or you can use the older Amazon Linux too. So by default, it has that, and there are also some deprecated versions. For example, this one is using Node 18, Node version 18, so no worries about that. So you can choose, right now you don't have no much leeway in terms of the platform version. You have to use the 6.0.1. So what happens is, if you're looking at 6, we have the different updates. So this one, 6 is the major update, 0 is the minor, and I think the 1 is what? The one is the patch, if you can say patch. So sometimes, for example, you can set up a maintenance window so that if there's a major platform, a major version update from maybe from 6.0.1 to 7.0.1, that can happen maybe during a certain specific time that is set. So for now, we are going to use sample application, because later on you're going to use the code pipeline to deploy your own code, or you can also use upload your own code and just set up. If you have it on an S3 or in your local file, you can set it up there. So let's just use a sample application. Again, we are talking about ensuring availability. We're also wanting to ensure that our system is maybe uh, zone tolerant. If there is a full zone failure, this application will still be up. So we can set that up. For the one that I did yesterday, I just did a single instance. But for a case, let us just do, so you can see there are different options. You can just use high availability using Spot on demand. If you already know about Spot, you already know that these are instances that can it's not under your control. It can be terminated. You're given, like, maybe, I don't know if it's a 10 or 5-second warning, but the good thing is they're the cheapest. So if you have workloads that can easily I can say, what is the word around that? It can be stopped, or maybe it can be, yes, it can be stopped, then it can come back again. It can be tolerant about being stopped and coming back again for running. Then you can use Spot instances. But if you're not sure, it's just better you just use the high availability. Then again, you can also use the custom configuration. So let us go custom. We are DevOps engineers, and myself, the aspiring here, trying to jump the boat. And if there's anything, please tell me. I might not be looking at the chat. So if there's anything at any point in time, please make sure you tell me. I'm using one screen. Sorry, I forgot about setting up a second screen. So let's go to so if there's any Macrane or Patrick, you can just tell me. You can just unmute and tell me if there's a question. So then we are still configuring our environment. We are done with that part. So we already know, using IAM, there's the importance of roles. So roles are the permissions, or can say what your other services will use to call and maybe get permissions to access other services. So we have the IAM role for Elastic Beanstalk to assume, which is called a service role. So you can create one by just clicking on that, and you can just check on the permission details. And here you can see that for it will be Elastic Beanstalk will be allowed. So this one is for enhanced health. So it will be able to check in terms of the instance health, check on the load balancers. It should be able to check the list the instances, check on the status of the instances, get the output, associate an address, describe, check on also the security groups that are there, and all these kind of permissions. Also auto scaling, all those will be under the Elastic, this managed policy around Elastic Beanstalk Enhanced Health. Then there's also another policy around managed updates customer role policy. You can also check all the details around what is allowed just to get more visibility. So since I'm really into security, sometimes it's really very important to know what these policies will do. So that is where you can do. But since I already have a role, I already have more than 200 roles that I'm wondering whether I should delete them or not. So I don't want to add one more. So I'll just use the one that I had. So this one is called Elastic Beanstalk Service Role. So usually get something similar as such, you can use that. And then if you want to securely, if you want to log in to the EC2 instances that will be spin up by Elastic Beanstalk, you can set up a key pair here. But since I don't want to do that for this lab, I'll not set up a key pair. But it's very important to set this up if you're going to use it to troubleshoot and get into the instances. And then we get this the instance profile, which are some of the policies that will allow some of your EC2 instances to perform some operations, maybe to access an RDS instance, to maybe uh, set up, maybe many other things. You can check it under the permission details here. Also access S3, get some, and even maybe set up some objects, put it them there. Also X-ray, if you're going to use it for, you're not going to also need to do optimization. And if you've set up an X-ray daemon, you can check on how long some of your requests are taking for certain key areas of your code using X-ray. Also CloudWatch logs, just to ensure that you can set up a log stream and put some of the log events set up, like, yeah, all these kind of things, and health access. So that was for the web tier. Then you have the worker tier. Same case, also something under X-ray, queue, bucket, all these CloudWatch logs, and also the multi-container Docker. So if you're going to, also you can use Docker for under Elastic Beanstalk, so that you have your containerized applications being deployed uh, on using Elastic Beanstalk. So there it is. So I will also use one that I already have. So I'll use this one. Then I'll go to next. So if there's any question regarding those, you can also ask. Hopefully there's none. You can see anything, which is good. I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know whether people are floating or we're good, but I hope we are good. So again, you can use a custom VPC. It's good best practice to isolate some of your workloads into a specific kind of a VPC, especially if for a certain customer and you're using your own AWS account and you're setting up some resources for a specific customer. It would be great if you just set it up. For the purposes of this lab, I'll just use my default VPC. So uh, so here I'll have to choose also yesterday I did something that was crazy. I chose just US East 1A here, but this was the reason why this one was not the right one. You can see it is a private subnet for RDS. So what happens is when my application was supposed to start, there was no data that was being sent from the instances to Elastic Beanstalk. So it was failing the health checks. So also be sure that when you're setting up the instance settings, you set it up in a way that, but you can still also use a private as long as you set up your VPC in a way that the 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 instances in the private subnet can be accessed through to the load balancer, and you know how all that goes. So for this case, I'll just use two availability zones. I'll just use US East 1A and 1B here. So those are the two. I believe by now you should already be knowing about subnetting. I know by standard usually use /16. So don't be shocked why I'm using /20 here. So if you're going to also use RDS, it's also very important. And since even though I'm not going to set up one right now, I'll still choose my two public subnets. I know best practice, you need to put your RDS in a private. So I'll choose these ones also, just to be precise, following best practice. I'll just use the 1A for RDS and 1B. Yeah, my private subnet 1 and 2 for RDS. But that would mean that if I'm going to enable the database, and then it's going to start spinning up. So if I just choose enable, if I put these, I can choose, if I already have a snapshot, I can restore a snapshot if I want to. But if I enable a database, it would mean that I can easily choose some of the database settings. So I can choose if I'm going to use MySQL, if I'm going to use the types of instance class. You already know these settings when you're setting it up on RDS. But for a case, not, my application do not need some kind of records that are going to be stored in a relational database, so I'll disable that. And then if it's very important to tag, so you can maybe tag this one, maybe for example, and for cost allocation tags, for example, you can put it for something. For example, I can say uh, costs, or you can just say client, then I can say ABS client, Elastic Beanstalk client or something. You can just ensure that you always tag these kind of uh, resources, make it best practice, and then you can have a standard around how you tag your allocations, your resources, how you allocate the tags to your resources. But for a case, I'm not going to do that for now. This is a lab which I'm going to delete immediately after the session. So I'm done with that. So if you're going to set up the root volume, if you want to choose the kind of, this also goes to in terms of performance, you can choose general purpose. Obviously, we know magnetic is crazy, so I don't know why I've clicked that. That one will give you the least kind of a performance, so you can check if you want to do provisioned IOPS. But for now, just use the container default. Okay, so it's important to set up CloudWatch monitoring, and also for your platform, for it to access some of the instance metadata, for example, the kind of instance that you've set up and all those kind of instance metadata. I know there is version 1 and version 2, but version 2 is more sessionized and helps you in terms of securely accessing the instance metadata. So by default, you can see you need to just disable version 1 and only use version 2. So you can check this link once you're there. For security groups, you just need to have a security group with a rule where it's going to allow inbound traffic from the HTTP port 80. So I already pre-created that. So it is here, this one called application. You only need that for now for this purpose of this lab. But again, if you need several, you can select a number of them there. So that is that about security groups. So for load, for example, you decided it's a custom configuration, so you can choose if you want to do a single instance or load balance. So if you do a load balance, what Elastic Beanstalk will do, it will it will set up a target group, an auto scaling group, a load balancer, an application load balancer to be precise, and ensure that it follows some of these configurations that you put. For example, I can say I want a minimum of 2 instances and maybe a maximum of, let's say, 4, which is totally fine. Then I can choose in terms of my fleet, do I want to combine combine different purchase options and instances, I can do that. If I just want to do on demand to reduce complexity, just for this lab, I'll just ensure that I use only on demand. But you can see you can set up all these. Again, I told you more about Graviton earlier, Graviton processors. So you can use these ones, but these would, you need to remember that as a caveat, you need to ensure that you might need to recompile some of your third-party tools and libraries. So that is basically that. So I'll just leverage the default just to ensure, because the sample application. So you can see usually have some different instance types. So for to be free tier eligible, so that you do this at no cost, I'll choose the t2.micro. So just to ensure that I don't spin up a big instance. There was one day something crazy happened to my account, and I got a notification that I was spinning up some of the largest instances on AWS. It was a crazy moment ever. So where's that T2? I'm seeing T3, T2, T2, T2. Yeah, it is T2.micro. Okay, good. The MID is provided there for you. Then again, also remember that you can choose, for example, specify availability zones. So if you want, you can choose that. But I can see 9 for mine is, so number of availability, you can use any, and we also expect that in terms of, so what is scaling cooldown? Scaling cooldown is maybe thinking of it, for example, how much time it takes when you're scaling in or scaling out. So you're adding more instances. For example, right now it can go from 2 to 4, or maybe 4 to 3, and 3 to 2, which is my minimum number. So it means that it will take me, it should take around 6 minutes for, is it 6 minutes? Yes, for it to, by default, for it to you can say, settle down, the whole thing is set up and that. So some of the triggers, what will take trigger, you can choose CPU utilization, if you want, and you can see we already usually say the average, the unit, and all these kind of things. So I can say here I'll choose maybe, yeah, so I can choose more things. For example, if I choose the maximum, for example, choose how the metric, so if the average CPU utilization, and if I look at the, I can say the count, and capacity in terms of the scale up and scale down increment, it just decrease by one instance, and this one it can increase by one. For example, if you have like 10, your maximum is 10, then it should, maybe if you decide to put 2, so it will increment by 2. But for a case, since I'm just having between 2 and 4, I'll just have it at 1. Okay, so load balancer network. So again, remember it's a public, and you can see that is why you can see this one is already pre-selected. So application load balancer, we've already mentioned that it's going to be dedicated. So you can see you can choose to use a load balancer that you already created before. For example, if I choose shared, I know I think I might be already having a load balancer because of the other lab that I did yesterday. I can just choose shared. So it will use some of the load balancer that I within in my account I created, and it can be shared among the, so that will help me maybe not to have multiple load balancers for several environments. So several environments can share one load balancer. But for our case, I just use the dedicated as a default. So one load balancer for this environment. So you can see the listen has been pre-created for me, 8 HTTP, the processes. So if I want to add another rule, for example, if I want to do some geo restrictions and maybe other things within the listener. For example, if a request is coming through to port 443 to go back to 480, I can add those rules here. If I want, I can also store logs for more retention for compliance purposes onto an S3 bucket. Remember that also S3 charges apply, but I'll not do that. Then I'll go to next. No worries, I think we have that the other is environment already up, so I'll just show you that. So also it's very important to have monitoring. This is part of maybe having an AWS well architected practices. You need to be clearly monitoring how your instances, how your deployment is performing. So you can have basic or enhanced, but you can see by default it is the enhanced. So you can choose maybe different specific metrics around that, but here I'll not choose. I'll not, then again, there's another very important thing that you need to check. So you can see it's not good to activate maybe ignore for maybe 404 or ignore the load balancer 404 error or something. So you can decide to choose that if you want, but then should you ignore that if you're looking at health monitoring? You need to know when your maybe your application is unavailable, or maybe if the load balancer is unavailable and all this. But for some use cases, that is why I know AWS is customer obsessed. It must be a use case where you'd want the health checks in terms of the health monitoring to ignore some of uh, these status codes, with 4xx being one of them. And then if you want, you can also stream your health events to CloudWatch logs. And remember that still CloudWatch charges will apply. Then I don't want to do that for now. I don't want to create so many resources. I'll have to think about what. So again, I mentioned about maintenance windows. So by default, there's usually a weekly update maintenance window for 2 hours. So you can choose, for example, I can choose over a weekend. I want it to happen, and maybe over maybe 1 in the night. That this is UTC. So if it is 1 in the night, or maybe for 3 a.m., I would say maybe, yeah, I would say at at UTC, that would be 3 a.m. Saturday 3 a.m. That is when local time it's going. So you can see if you want to do what is the update level, if you want minor and patch, you remember I told you about the 6.0.1. So minor is the 0, patch is the 1. So if you want only patch updates, you can do that. If you want both minor and patch, you can choose that. Then again, you also remember that you can also update, you can enable instance replacement. So that means that if there's no other updates, you can also enable instance. Again, also another thing, you can also leverage SNS and have you can set up maybe your email. For example, I can just set up my email very fast here, and it will set up an SNS topic, and I can subscribe to it. And then we talked about deployment policies. That is crazy. So you can have a rolling. By now, we've done already a number of challenges within Cloudforce Sky. So by now, you should already be knowing some of these deployment policy. In a rolling, you already know that the instances are updated as the application is running, and it can cause some form of downtime. So for rolling with an additional batch, what happens is if you're having 4 instances, a fifth instance is added, and then it is the one that is updated, and then maybe 4 instances are there, you have another batch of 4 instances which are updated, and then you now switch from the ones that have been updated to the ones that were the ones that were what. So let's say you're having 4 old instance with not having the update, and then you have an additional batch enabled. So what will happen is 4 more instances will be, for that period of the update, will be spun up, then they'll be updated, and then now the 4 old ones are going to be terminated once the whole updates are done. Then you have immutable. Immutable is where you don't, as the word says, is you don't mess up with the one that is there. So you set up new ones and then you go to that. Then traffic splitting is where you can change traffic. For example, if you're having 4 instances, traffic can go to 2 instances and another traffic can go to the other 2 instances. So those are some of the different deployment methods. So it depends on the use case that you're going to use. So we just use rolling for a case, and here I would choose maybe, for example, since I'm having 2 instances and I'm using 30 instances, 30% of the instances per time, that would mean that it will take how many rolls? It will take around 2 or 3, I think, for it to get to 100, 3 or 4. That means you get to 120. So if I choose traffic split, I would have been able to set these up. So application rolling update type. So you can see you can update maybe based on time, on health, or even the immutable. I'll just leave it as deactivated. Another important thing is ignore health check. So it's a feature that you can check in the Amazon Elastic Beanstalk documentation. So that means is if you want deployments not to be failed or to be deemed as failed due to health check failures, you can set it up as true, but it's best practice to have it as false, because if there's a health check failure, it means that that deployment really, for example, maybe the Elastic Beanstalk can't reach your instance, the instances deployed, then that is a failed deployment. Yes, then for a proxy server, there are different options like Apache NGINX, but using that, you can enable X-ray, as you mentioned, S3 log storage, and such. And also you can pass environment variables using this section here, if it's needed. For example, maybe API keys, if you're using maybe Open AI for a conversational app, whatever it is, you can pass those environment variables there. So this is crazy. The Elastic Beanstalk custom configuration has a lot, but no worries, we are at the tail end. So we are done with what? We are done with here is where you review everything again all over just to make sure, and just submit that. So once I submit that, the good thing is we had already done what? We'd already done something in terms of our, so this one usually takes a bit of time, like around 5 or 6 minutes, but you remember that I had another what? I had another environment setup. So I want to open CodePipeline just to show you how I'd already set it up. So what is happening? CodePipeline. It is loading. I don't know whether my network is acting up. I think it's here. So let it load. Any questions so far? I know we are really over time, but yeah. Awesome. I don't see any questions yet. So yeah, but let's see what happens with CodePipeline on this case. Then I'll open for questions at the end. So what is happening with my screen? Or it's my 1,000 tabs. Okay, let it load. Let me leave that. And I should have opened it in a new tab. We love new tabs. Anyone who loves new tabs like me. So let that load. Okay. It's loading. Wow. Was I stuck on a different screen? Okay. So this was the pipeline that worked yesterday. So just to do the pipeline, I think we already did this in a previous challenge. I think it was McCreen and Lewis who took us through how you can set it up on CodePipeline and Node application. It was a book app. So you just go through the create pipeline process. To integrate GitHub, you need to, so you can call it, maybe, for example, I call that application CFS. So I can just say CFS pipeline. So you can see you can choose an existing service role, or you can just use the one that is going to be pre-created for you. If you want, you can check some of the advanced settings, especially if you're looking at KMS and all that. And then if I'm choosing the source provider, here is where you integrate. By best practice, usually use GitHub version 2. So you'll choose that. Once you choose that for the source stage, you're going to choose now the connection. So for example, you can see I had already created a connection to my GitHub. This one it is. But if you don't have a connection yet, you click on connect to GitHub, then you go through those all procedures. For the sake of time, I'll use my connection here. So you can see it is loading and it's going to choose. I think for this connection, I restricted it to one repository. Here it is, CodePipeline S3 code deploy. It was a sample application from my GitHub. And then I can choose the branch. It was only one branch. And then you can choose the kind of output artifact format and the detection options. For example, we usually use by best practice to start the pipeline when there's a new commit. Then that is for the source stage. For the build, for Elastic Beanstalk, I've seen in a number of different challenges and projects that usually skip this build stage, right? But then again, if you want to set up something like static application security scanning, or maybe dynamic, maybe using Snake or Starhawk. Starhawk is something like this. I usually have it here for security testing and maybe some linters. You can set up your build stage here. But for now, I'll skip the build stage for now. But you can leverage that for those different purposes that I already mentioned. So for the deploy provider, I'll obviously use Elastic Beanstalk, and I'll choose the application that we just used, which is CFS. And it will give me an error if that environment has not fully deployed or maybe fully been created by Elastic Beanstalk. So once I review and I create that pipeline, that whole process should go end to end. That means it should take advantage and deploy the application that was there in my repository, the one that I'd shown you, and deploy it to Elastic Beanstalk. If I go to Elastic Beanstalk, which I told you I should have remained, let me just go to Beanstalk. If I have Beanstalk around, here it is. Let me open it in a new tab as you maintain this pipeline. So you can see that's what I'm telling you. Their action, so Elastic Beanstalk environment CFS could not be updated because it has another status other than ready. So you can be sure the reason why my deploy stage failed is because my environment had not been fully completed. I told you it takes around 6 or so minutes. But then again, we can look at a pipeline that succeeded yesterday. Let us look at some of the pipelines. Okay. You remember at the start of the session, I turned on which I think it was this one. Should have been this one. Okay. So I want to get the URL to the Elastic Beanstalk application. So you can see this has succeeded, and you can see if I want, do I have it here? Don't know whether it is this one or it is another application. I think there's another project. This one is another project. This one is, don't know, it must be another project. Yeah, but let me just show you. This file, open recent. I think it was this one, right? Yes, so yeah, so if it is that one, as it loads, so it was this one. Congratulations, you have successfully. So I can add maybe congratulations, Kevin. But I think I wanted to open for you the link. So if I do this and I save it, let me first of all get my Beanstalk URL. And I don't know why my Beanstalk is not loading. And I think it's because of my many tabs and windows, but it's totally fine. Okay, so I wanted to get you the link. Should I get it? Should be somewhere here. Don't know whether it is this one. This one is my app. My app was yesterday. This one was my app. It wasn't going to work. So let us get it from here. Let it load. So it is loading. So I think this one is the one that is, you can see it's still pending. So the status is pending. So that means that it's not going to deploy when the health for CFS environment is that. So let us open this one, this environment. And you already know that this is the link. So let us open it in a new tab. So let us hope when I did one instance, the single instance, it deployed. So let us see if it's going to load. Okay, I need to allow my firewall. So here it is. If you want to confirm for yourself, I need to share this with you. Share that with you. Just check it out from your end. So what I can do is, you see that it shows just congratulations. I want to add congratulations, Kevin. So just ensure that it's coming through the code pipeline. So I've added that here. I just want to commit update index.html, and I just do a commit, and I just stage that and update that, and I just sync those changes to that repo on my GitHub. That's basically it. I think it has committed. So when I go back to my, if I'll just, you can see, it is now, it has already gotten that commit. So it's going to do that, then it's going to deploy, which is going to take a bit of time, and you don't have that time, but you already get the point that after a while, it's going to deploy it to Elastic Beanstalk, and then yeah, as you can see here, it has already succeeded the source part. So it's now at the stage of deploying my new update. You can also use a blue-green deployment where you have two instances. So you're having, two environments, and then you can leverage this feature. There's this feature where under actions, you can swap the environment domain. So that means is once your blue deployment is fine, you can just swap the environment domain between the blue and the green, just to ensure that the users are getting the same, they're using the same URL, but now that you've confirmed that your new updates are working, they can switch from that. So that is that. So you can see what has happened. I think this one was, I think did this just change? I don't know whether this one is finished. Which this is updated. Let's see if I can refresh this. As you can see, congratulations, Kevin. And that one's happened through, I haven't looked at it in terms of the Beanstalk, just happened through the CI/CD pipeline. And you can see it has just completed that. So looking at what we did, don't know whether it stopped or whether it finished in terms of the CFS. So you can see it is failed. No, I think this is this one failed because we already knew why it failed, which was the environment was not ready. So if you see, I can see I had a health severe, and that is what I didn't want to happen. Maybe it's because I chose, and I can just check environment health transition from pending to severe. ALB process are not healthy. The initialization has been running. None of the instances are sending data. So this can be an issue about security groups, or I can now resolve it under EC2 instances, all these kind of things. Then I just make sure that my environment is fine. You can also check some of the other things under logs, so I can be able to see what is happening. So maybe it could have been an issue around the security groups, or maybe what I did in terms of RDS. So I can easily do that, and then I can retry. I can maybe rebuild, and many other things that I can do. So basically that is it. What can you do? What some of the resources that you need? Some of the resources that you need I can share with you here. So obviously you already know the FAQs, very important. So let me share that with you. There it is. You can check out the FAQs around Elastic Beanstalk, and also the good old AWS documentation, and our newest friend, ChatGPT, Bard, Bing Chat, whatever works for you. That's it for me. I don't care what is your piece of cake. So that's it for me, unless there's any question. Yeah, that's basically it. I hope it was nice. Hope you've learned something. Thank you. Sorry for going a bit
Wow.
long. Yeah.
Wow, Kevin. Yeah,
Yeah. Mm.
you are a very resourceful person. Very, very resourceful. And thank you so much. A round of applause.
You're
Let's
welcome.
send some digital McCoffee to Kevin. Digital McCoffee. If you've learned something, let's appreciate him. So thank you so much, Kevin, for such an in-depth knowledge sharing session. We believe that we have all benefited from the knowledge shared. So in case anybody here joined us late, do not worry, the recording will be posted on our YouTube channel. So just search us. We had posted a link to our YouTube channel on the chat, but you can also search us as Cloudforce Sky. That's our name on YouTube. You can also find us with the same identity on LinkedIn. So if you are new, you've never followed us, kindly follow us on those two platforms and be abreast with our next meetings, our next sessions that we will be having. So we will also share links for you to follow us on the same video. So when you check the video description, you'll be able to see some links that will redirect you to our LinkedIn page. And we'll also include Kevin's links to his LinkedIn so that you can also connect with him there. So thank you everybody for joining us. I don't want to close anybody outside. If we have any questions, this is the time for you to ask. We have like 2 minutes, an extension of 2 minutes. If there is any question, that is. So if you have a question, kindly raise your hand. Nice. Silence means we are okay. So that's awesome. So asante sana tena, Kevin. So thank you all for joining us, and see you on the next. From us here at Cloud4 Sky, it's bye for now. Cheers.
Thank you, guys. Have a lovely one. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.